Commissioners, Zach Taleric, Director of the Office of Management and Budget. Our next budget hearing is with the Emergency Management and Homeland Security. At the table from your right to left is Jeff Young, Director, Daryl Korber, and Jan Bartel.
Great.
Great. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm pleased to be here, an opportunity finally to introduce myself. Several in the room have met me or worked with me over the years, and this equates to 30 days in the position for me.
30 days.
And it has been a busy 30 days,
Yeah.
and I think you'll hear a common theme that as I was listening to Sheriff Baldwin speak, is common in that much of that time has been spent over the past 30 days listening to partners, both internal as well as external, and meeting, and you'll see even looking forward to some of my goals for 2017, building relationships, which I feel is one of the key points that our agency is positioned to bring forward to the county and all the jurisdictions. As we move forward, and I have a brief PowerPoint,
Good.
if nothing else, to keep me on track, and then give us an opportunity for questions and answers at the end.
Sure.
You know, as I look forward to 2017, you know, one of my beliefs is that, you know, Franklin County Emergency Management and Homeland Security, we remain committed to serving all of Franklin County in the areas of mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. We're responsive to all 42 jurisdictions across the county, from the biggest to the smallest, and we'll be reaching out to not only those that sit on our executive board, as do the commissioners, but to all of those jurisdictions to realize that we are their emergency management agency and function as a resource to them to help them provide service to the community, as well as the conduit for them to request resources from the state and ultimately the federal government if they should need it in the event of a disaster. So looking backwards, much of the work that has been done in 2016 has been done by staff. Daryl Korber to my immediate right, and Jan Bartel, our fiscal manager, have really done a wonderful job keeping things moving forward. This is not an all-inclusive list that doesn't even address our work with volunteers in our specialties, or some of the training classes that we hold at our facility to provide the National Incident Management System training that is provided by the federal government we typically host. But as we look at 2016, or look back at 2016, we undertook a 2016 regional grant, a Homeland Security grant process that was rolled out by the state that took on a more regional flavor for the first time, in that they assigned grant dollars by region and left it to the planning regions, in which we are Region 4, for the EMA directors to work out exactly where those dollars would be best spent and which projects should move forward. So that work took place. For Region 4, there were 5 grants that could be funded. 3 of those are centered on Central Ohio, where we're Franklin County based, and they're primarily in the areas of collapse rescue with our regional collapse rescue team, which is getting some equipment and some advanced training. The coroner's office, which is going to work on a regional mass fatality management plan, as well as the law enforcement community is going to have both a tabletop and a functional exercise geared towards a violent situation or an active shooter, in conjunction with a large private entity up in the Polaris area. So that will be a great learning opportunity to work with our private sector partners and to put into play how that would unfold in the real world. We've worked to update the county emergency operation plan, specifically recently in the areas of our risk assessment, which identifies the highest priorities risks for Franklin County, our recovery plan, the hazmat plan, and the dangerous and wild animal response team plan. Those have all either been completed or have rolled out to the stakeholders to address and provide feedback on. And we are currently working on our debris management plan. As we know, both debris management and volunteer and donation management are the gifts that keep on giving after an event. So those are high profile and high importance to us. We are, in 2015, received a grant to implement an indoor warning system for high-risk and high-occupancy locations. And what that does is it will tie in our outdoor warning system activation method to provide notice to high-risk or high-occupancy facilities that there is a tornado warning in the area or a weather warning in the area. If you can imagine in the real world, if you're at a summertime event at Nationwide Arena with lots of activity and noise, there can be a tornado warning going on outside and the people inside will have no clue. So this will tie that in. It won't trigger anything in the building other than a local alarm, which will then notify those that are responsible for hosting the event that something is going on, and then they can institute whatever specific plan they have for their facility. Those will go out probably in the next month, will start to be distributed across Franklin County.
So if I understand correctly, those indoor alarms won't go off in the entity itself. It'll just trigger to whoever's in operations of the event.
Correct. It is
So
an
it won't create a panic in.
Correct. It is
That's a great idea. I didn't realize it. I misunderstood and thought originally when it was talked about that it would just send off an alarm internally.
No, it is more of a self-contained box that would be located into whatever control room or command post,
Yeah.
security area they have for that facility, which would then just alert the full-time staff or the host
Right.
that something is going on, because those plans are pretty specific to each facility, and each weather condition may dictate a little bit different response from them and how they handle it, whether that is sheltering in place or evacuation. So they would make that judgment or that decision.
Good idea.
So there will be 40 of those distributed basically across Franklin County, ranging from public venues such as Nationwide Arena to OSU's facilities to some of the more high-profile and larger private enterprises. So those will be going out. And then we worked with a consultant to develop a marketing campaign, a social media marketing campaign regarding our Alert Franklin County mass notification system. So in 2016, that planning took place, and you'll see that become more visible and outward facing in 2017, and I'll address that as part of the 2017 move forward. So 2017 was, we're looking out, one of my biggest goals is to reach out and develop those partnerships and the relationships. I actually had an opportunity to talk to Sheriff Baldwin before this and introduce myself and make sure that he's comfortable reaching out to us as I'm doing with all of the different agencies to pull them in, utilize their resources, make sure they understand that we're there as a coordinating resource, as well as help to build those partnerships so that everybody is bringing the right things to the table and providing the best service and really fulfilling their missions, which then will fulfill ours. We will continue to move forward with that 2016 grant process. Behind the scenes, we have to submit budgets to state EMA, who approves that budget as far as what the actual items are that'll be purchased. It's on the equipment lists and everything. That has gone forward. That budget has been approved. So now it'll move into an implementation phase that will either be managed at our facility as the first step, and then work with the procurement staff down here at Franklin County to either award a contract to conduct the exercise or do the mechanics of it, develop the planning, or make any purchases as necessary to fulfill that. Within that, we are also, because the grant was awarded regionally, one agency needed to act as the fiscal manager for the entire grant, and we will handle that. So we will also be working with, I believe one is Logan County, who has satellite phones for the region, or is developing a satellite phone network. We have some locally, but not throughout the region. And Crawford County, which is developing a cache of Mark's radios that can be distributed to local emergency managers. So we'll handle the legwork of that. And then obviously, what's very important to myself as well as the staff, and I think everybody on the executive committee, is our mass notification system. We will roll out during Severe Weather Awareness Week. The marketing firm that we're utilizing will actually take over our social media items, both our Facebook and our Twitter account, for about 2 weeks, which they will then have a focused effort to push out our information to people, try to drive up our opt-in or people who customize their alerting methods during those 2 weeks. So there's some unique things behind the scenes at Facebook where you push Facebook posts to people, where you refresh the information, where you keep it relevant, with the desire to make that available and aware to as many people as possible. We currently have about 15,000 that have created a profile and opted in, and that is on top of the 800,000 that are part of the database that we pulled in. So we've got about 850,000 current contacts that we can send a mass notification out to based upon the area and the messaging. So we're going to continue to try to drive that up a little bit. As part of that, I also want to evaluate a community engagement model that's available through the vendor for that program. Obviously, you know, with the events Monday at OSU, you know, anybody watching that saw that social media, text messaging, smartphones was a vast importance to that, and has really taken the place of our traditional methods of how we communicate with people, and trying to develop that capability to its fullest is something we're going to continue to explore. There is a module, and I've got a couple slides to show you really quickly that outline that. So we're going to continue to, you know, explore that model, as well as how we increase our opt-in or our profiles, our people who have customized and really made their mobile device as part of our system, is really what this is designed for. So currently, this is an example of how it works or what's available to us. You'll see there's a database represented by the orange bucket or cylinder. You know, those are white pages, yellow pages, 911 residential information, 911 commercial information that is part of the database that we draw from, as well as individual member opt-ins. And then down across the bottom there are methods that we can send out messaging or notifications through. So that is where we're at today and what we're really working on implementing and utilizing. What we want to look at is what I classify as the anonymous opt-ins, keyword opt-ins, or geographic opt-ins, which allow people to immediately on the fly put themselves in the system, and we can push messages out to them in multiple methods. Many of us have probably been at sporting events where, as part of their marketing campaign, they get you to, you know, text something like a specific word like Blue Jackets to a specific number as part of a way to engage their audience or their membership, their patrons, and then there's usually, you know, a prize or an award as part of that. Well, that's part of the community engagement and how they then reach out to people and develop a database of sending information. And that's something that we don't currently have in place, that I want to explore how we do that and how we maximize and use that in emergency messaging. Most recently, you know, you can see, you know, as an example, this would be an example for Franklin County, but it was most recently used in Florida effectively during the hurricane evacuations, where they could, you know, identify somebody as you know, text evacuation to 888-777, and what it is people are automatically in your system, and you can push out specific tailored information to anybody that has texted to that number. So in the evacuation example, you know, they would text evacuation to 888-777, and you can notify them of evacuation corridors that are open, time frames that's available, time frames when evacuation routes might be closed. They then turned around and used the same thing in the recovery model of, you know, text recovery to 888-777, and it allowed them to provide information on, you know, where to get resources, when you can return to an area, how you get connected to resources, and who to contact. So that's a technology that we don't have in place yet that is really, I think, where we want to go, because it allows us to message on the fly in an immediate manner to a specific audience that isn't going to sit down and create a profile through a web portal. I think that really covers most of what we're looking forward to in 2017, you know, along with our natural, you know, classes we hold working with all the volunteer organizations as well as our normal planning and exercising. So, do you have any questions for us?
So, you mentioned earlier there's 42 jurisdictions. And, you know, we all know, you know, it's like family. Not everybody always sees eye to eye, not everybody always gets along. What kind of, and you also had talked about relationship building and stuff like that.
Correct.
So what kind of work are you doing to, you know, to make sure that even when we may not all agree on something, we're all on the same page on things? And I mean, because my experience with EMA is that, you know, when you have 90% of everybody happy, there's still a few folks out there, a couple of jurisdictions, a suburb here, or the city of Columbus, or somebody, the county commissioner, somebody's not necessarily always on that same page. And to me, beyond the work, that's the single biggest issue you have, is there's no chance that everybody's going to be happy all the time. There's always going to be, Eric's over here nodding his head, he gets it. There's
Yes.
always going to be somebody upset, or a couple of people upset. A couple suburbs here didn't get what they wanted,
Correct.
or they were expecting something else. There's always that. What are you trying to do to put in place to make sure that even during those times, everybody's on the same page, everybody understands? They may not like it, but
Correct.
they get it. You know, to me, that's one of your biggest challenges.
Correct, and that's my focus as the director, to do that outward reaching, outward looking work. In that, you know, I've got great staff who do things within the walls every day. The deputy director, you know, he and I have talked about focus on that. You know, my job is to be out with them to make sure they understand that I'm working for them. You know, they may not agree with everything. You know, anytime you're managing grants, time you're managing fiscal resources, you have to tell somebody no, and they're never happy. You know, so that's the challenge. You know, whether they're a small jurisdiction or, quite honestly, the big jurisdictions. You know, so that comes from personal credibility and outlining to them the large picture and everybody's skin in the game and how the big picture benefits them on the local level. You know, so that's, and then what role they fill and how they're served by that big picture, and how, you know, that big picture is actually designed to help them serve their constituency or their local jurisdictions, and it really involves pulling some of them in to the conversation early on. It goes to that listening. Now, sometimes that involves, you know, there's not a group meeting that has currently occurred at our facility, whether it's the chiefs of police, Franklin County Fire Chiefs, you know, volunteer council, you know, all of those groups that I don't sit in and haven't introduced myself to, made myself available to them individually as well as at a group level. And the same thing takes place, I think, with the jurisdictions, because some, you know, you've got to pull into the group setting and have a group discussion. You know, most recently there's been lots of discussion about, you know, radio communications and bringing all of the partners to the table there and getting everybody working cohesively and cooperatively. You know,
Chairing the E911 board for the last
good luck, sir.
3 or 4 years.
Yes, I've attended a few of those meetings. So.
And be honest, whether it's EMA or frankly that board, it's generally suburbs, a suburb, a group of suburbs that are wary of the larger jurisdiction.
Sure.
Wary of the city of Columbus. It seems to happen a lot in the EMA case. On E911, they were wary of Franklin County for a while, and we understood that. Tried to work the last 3 or 4 years to make sure that, you know, we're trying to work on everybody's best interests. As we're a tad bit different in that all the other jurisdictions are, you know, you got the city of Columbus and you have all these other suburbs. Well, we're the county.
Correct.
And so our colleague likes to say we're all Franklin County, but at the end of the day, we try to keep in mind, Columbus is the driver. The city of Columbus is the hub of the region. All things whether they be emergency management or economic development or whatever, all things spin off of that axis, and it does for a reason. And so we try to keep that in mind and understand that. At the same time, trying to make sure that we're also serving the needs of every other jurisdiction out there, and that we are representing them in the most
Correct.
positive light. We get it. I'm glad to see that you do too.
Yes.
Because, not everybody always plays nice in a sandbox. There's very, in this type of an environment, there's very little kumbaya. We're all, and we just have to make sure that everybody understands
Right.
that all this
You
stuff.
know, everybody feels a
Entirety.
responsibility to fight for their constituency.
That's
And
right.
sometimes that then, puts them at odds or, limits how they're viewed. So I actually think, when we were talking about, the radio communications side of it, we're kind of unique in that we are a little bit standalone, and we have an executive committee and an advisory group made up of all jurisdictions. So we're trying to leverage that uniqueness in our ability to bring everybody to the table, represent everybody, and maybe help them understand that we aren't building a kingdom. It's not just us. It's really us helping them to fulfill their roles. Is really how it comes to, under the ORC, our biggest probably focus is being the conduit between local resources and the state of Ohio. But on a more granular, down in the grass level, it is that relationship building, those partnerships, and I hope the commissioners, the administrator, deputy administrator, everybody down in this building feels comfortable that if they need to call me with an issue, to say, to either ask, say, help me understand why we're doing this way, or, hey, I need you to reach out to this person or bring these people to the table, and at least let them express their viewpoints so they can go home saying, well, they listened to me, they heard me, I may not, we may not fund 8 hazmat teams across Franklin County, but they heard me say why I think we should be one, and at least feel like they had a voice and we were responsive to listening to that.
That's right.
And I think that's the most important thing, that you're direct and open and available. And that's the most you can do.
We try to remind all of them that we're unique in that if they're your constituent, they're our constituent.
Correct.
So.
And that work never ends.
Right.
Obviously, the legislative bodies constantly change.
Oh, yeah.
People in positions or decision-making positions change,
Yeah.
As well as the environment we operate in.
Sure.
Change. Sheriff Baldwin and I were talking a little bit about the events Monday at Ohio State, and from a planning perspective, and I'm not really talked to my staff yet about this, but we talked to how would that react, or how would that look if it happened out in the general community, large or small, or across jurisdictional boundaries where there was, it was not self-contained at one place,
Right.
with a
hospital right there.
has its own
Yeah.
police force, has great supporting agencies, has its own communication center, has its own hospital,
Yeah.
all of those things. How would that look, and how would we as a community react, and what plan is in place if that had taken place at, at a local shopping venue or a sporting event or a large community gathering, and how would that look? What partners need to be at the table, and who is in what position to react, and at what level?
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thanks, guys.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
Keep up the good work.
You go.